Former President George W. Bush in September 24th, 2008, he said, "If we don't loosen up some money, this sucker could go down." Now, by the words "this sucker," I believe he meant to say the entire U.S. financial system, but by extension that of the rest of the world as well. Some money was indeed loosened up. The Federal Reserve was recently audited as a result of an act of Congress for the first time in its history since 1913. And it emerges that the Federal Reserve pumped $16 trillion into the global economy after 2008 in order to keep it afloat. $16 trillion is a lot of money. It happens to be more than the entire annual U.S. GDP. And yet, even with all of that, and the U.S. is deficit spending to this day at a rate of $100 billion a month. Now, of course, there's great hue and cry, great concern about that in Washington because, you can't keep borrowing money forever. But if the government stops deficit spending, then where's the economic engine going to come from? The economy just isn't picking back up on its own. We hear about bailouts, and Greek bailouts, for example. Now, are the people of Greece being bailed out? Are the people of the U.S. being bailed out? No. What's actually happening is that in order for the banks to receive the payments on their existing loans, they effectively made a bet with subprime mortgages and home equity lines of credit in the U.S. based on inflated house prices, and in Europe with loans from banks in Germany and France to countries like Greece. The bet was that there would be plenty of economic growth in the future, and therefore it would be easy for these people or countries to pay back these loans. When that turns out not to be the case, when economic growth isn't happening and the payments can't be made, well, these loans turn out to be toxic assets for the banks. But rather than seeing the banks fail because they made bad bets and their assets turn out to be toxic, more money is created out of nothing by central banks and by governments to make the payments, but those loans are on the backs of the people. So the Greeks now are working 6-day weeks and 13-hour days with the hope that their economy will start to grow somehow and they'll be able to pay back ever larger debt. It's not going to happen. We have hit limits to debt. You know yourself, if you take on so much debt that you can't make the payments and the bank doesn't want to loan you any more money, then you've hit the wall. That's what we're doing. That's what is going on in the very simplest terms right now across the world. But that's not all that's happening. Of course, climate is changing, and I'm not going to argue that climate change is currently, right at this moment, choking off world economic growth. But I will argue that over the course of this decade, climate change is going to come in from the wings and deliver the coup de grace on world economic growth. We all know the story. Global carbon emissions are increasing. Global temperatures are going up.